Let's talk today about two disorders that I see in a lot of my coaching clients that have experienced a betrayal in their marriage. Leslie Wells, connection coach. I help individuals heal, thrive, improve, repair, and connect more deeply in their romantic relationships by looking at things through an attachment lens. And so a lot of times attachment style and core wounds and incorrect belief systems from your attachment style will actually contribute to the dynamics that lead to betrayal. If you are the betrayed, if you are someone who finds yourself repetitively being betrayed, or with really bad partners who are abusive, who breadcrumb you, who are very avoidant, who maybe are cheating or narcissist, that usually ties back to your attachment style as well and why you're seeking those types of a partner. So naturally, working in the realm of attachment, betrayal is something that comes to me a lot, and I work with a lot of couples that are either working through it or couples that are moving on, and individuals who want to heal their own insecure attachment so they don't find those partners again, or they're able to heal from it so they have secure attachment after being betrayed in that way. Okay, so there's two disorders I'm going to talk about today. One is post-infidelity stress disorder, or PISD, and that is very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, but it is specific to betrayal and infidelity, obviously, in the name. But there are some nuances. And the other one is PTED, post-traumatic embitterness disorder, and they are different. So let's talk about the ways that they are different. I usually see the post-infidelity stress disorder in almost every client that I work with in some way, shape, or form, even those that maybe were, especially those that are very anxiously attached. The other one I don't necessarily always see, but if I do, then it's something that really has to be addressed. So post-infidelity stress disorder is actually in the DSM, whereas the PTED is not in the DSM. And the post-infidelity stress disorder actually has more physical symptoms, similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, where a person, in this particular instance, in this disorder, the person actually has changes that are happening in the brain. The prefrontal cortex is going to actually thin because the amygdala, which is your brain's threat detection center, is going to be in overdrive. We call that amygdala hijack, because betrayal actually threatens a person's physical safety, and the brain does not know the difference between an emotional threat, a perceived threat, or a real threat, or a current, past, or present threat. And so when you have a huge rupture in your romantic relationship, your marriage, that your brain, because we are designed for a connection and we need to be able to rely on other human beings for our safety, our emotional needs, and other needs that we have, the brain will determine that that is a threat and treat it as if there really is a physical threat for your life. And so essentially, whenever someone is betrayed, the nervous system goes into fight or flight, the amygdala hijacks and takes over, the prefrontal cortex, which is your rational, logical thinking, goes offline and actually thins. And there's a couple other structural things that happen as far as your memories being coded differently because your hippocampus is also impacted. So there's a lot of these physical things that happen, and post-traumatic or post-infidelity stress disorder is actually really more about your safety and your survival. And that is a little bit different than the PTED. So the post-traumatic embitterment disorder is actually more focused on the moral injury and the injustice and the unfairness of what happened. So one is centered around safety and survival, and this one is more the moral hurt, the unfairness, the humiliation, the fact that what that person did to you does not align with your moral code, and probably not even their moral code, which is even more room for feeling that unjustness, that unfairness. But it's really getting stuck in this place of embitterment and anger, and getting stuck in this place of vengeance and not being able to move forward, let go, and forgive. So this is really centered more around emotional and cognitive impact versus the actual physical and safety impacts that we see from post-infidelity stress disorder. And I really think when it comes to the PTED, it's almost like whenever there's a betrayal, you essentially go through the stages of grief. Every client that I work with goes through, denial, anger, sadness, mourning. There's all these different stages of grief that they go through. And one of the things, and eventually, hopefully, acceptance. One of the things that I see with the post-traumatic embitterment disorder, that is a lot to say, is that it really keeps people stuck in that denial and not being able to move towards acceptance, which ultimately eventually really hinders progress and healing if you're stuck there and you can't accept it and move around the fact that this happened. Yes, it was unfair. It's absolutely unacceptable. You should have never had to suffer this when you didn't have any say in what two people did to harm you. But you don't want to get stuck there forever, because the problem with this particular disorder is it really leaves people stuck in a place of victimhood versus empowerment, where they can actually get true healing from it. And for anyone who's a Christian, most of you have been following me for a while, you know I'm a Christian, I speak openly about that. That really goes against your moral code too, because if you're a Christian, you really believe in forgiveness and that you have to give it eventually, you have to give it the same way that you received it. And so it's really important that you make a choice to forgive, even though the feelings are going to follow later. And even though that does not mean that the behavior was acceptable or that you're ever going to forget, but you have to actually move towards forgiveness if you're a Christian. And so getting stuck in this place also creates this stronghold of the enemy as well. So some of the symptoms of post-infidelity stress disorder are the same as PTSD, right? There's intrusive thoughts, there's flashbacks, there's nightmares, there's situations where there's triggers where something reminds you of a text, of a person that you saw in a picture, someone that you saw in real life, of a place, of a date, and actually your body responds the same way as if that were happening all over again in real time. It takes you back to that place. There's lots of flashbacks. There's things that you can't get out of your mind. So that is very normal for that particular disorder, and that makes it a little bit different. And that can really interfere with daily functioning and actually functioning normally, which also happens because so many different parts of the brain are impacted structurally, and the nervous system has gone haywire because it's now looking and responding based on survival and safety versus connection. So with the PETD, it also has to be on a level of impairment, meaning that you really have these intrusive thoughts and this anger and this bitterness that is taking root and is really interacting with your day-to-day functioning. And that can look like all of a sudden. So if we look at the post-infidelity stress disorder, it's normal for people after betrayal to not trust other people, right? To not trust themselves, other people. But people in PTED actually don't just not trust people because it's not just a safety thing. They don't like people. They're like, I don't want anything to do with people anymore. People are evil, they're vile, they're harmful. Like there's just this anger and this resentment that makes them want to isolate and just stay away from people. Their thoughts around people are awful. They'll meet someone and immediately they're like, they're a liar. Or a couple is getting married and they're like, oh, he's going to cheat eventually, or she's going to cheat eventually. No one ever really makes it. Vows are meaningless. Marriage is meaningless. So you can see the different lens. One's for safety and one is just really bitter. And the PTED can really get stuck in the vengeance stage. It is normal after betrayal to have thoughts of vengeance and getting back at your partner or the person who was involved with your partner. But people with PTED can really get stuck here, and it can really sort of take root for much longer in a much deeper way. So questions that someone might ask with post-infidelity stress disorder are, how could you do this to me? Would you ever bring someone unsafe around our children? Can I ever actually trust you again? If you lied about this, what else are you lying about? They're all geared towards safety versus the PTED, which is more like, how could you dishonor me in this way? I gave up all my life, or I helped build her, and then she turns around and she goes and she does this to me. How could he discard me for her? Like, what does she have? Look at her, that's a downgrade. And in all fairness, it usually is. I've wasted so much of my life with this person or this marriage. But you can see the difference. One is just a really cynical, critical view of people versus a fear of people. A fear of being able to trust people and knowing that they're safe. And the problem with being in PTED is a lot of times it can actually lead to vengeance, where someone actually does step out and then hurt their partner back or want to retaliate. So the post-traumatic embitterment disorder is really the one that I think is probably the worst. It gets people so stuck in this bitter place that they are not able to heal and move forward, and the rumination just doesn't go away. They get stuck in it and play it in a loop over and over and over again. And it's characterized by lasting a really long time, like months to years. That's a terrible place to be stuck for that long. If you or your partner are going through this and you need some help, I do coaching one-on-one and I do two-on-one coaching to help individuals working through a betrayal or individuals who have been betrayed that are trying to heal so they can move forward and hopefully find a new relationship one day from a securely attached place.